and yellow, a colorful array. You can grow them where the sun spreads its rays throughout the day.
Hello everybody, hello children. Welcome to today's online field trip. I'm Sam and this is Gert, our guide for today. Hello Gert.
Hello.
Now as you can see, we're in an enormous glass house. We're here in Kent, which is in the southeast of England, to learn all about a very versatile type of food. We eat them raw in salad and sandwiches, and we eat them cooked in pasta sauces and curries. Of course, I'm talking about the tasty tomato. So Gert, thank you so much for having us here today. What are we going to see?
We'll be looking at the actual greenhouse, we'll be looking at different varieties, we'll be looking at bumblebees and basically how we grow these tomatoes.
Fabulous stuff. We're also going to be finding out a bit more about how we like to enjoy eating tomatoes as well. That's the most important thing, isn't it, Gert?
That's right.
So how long have you been growing tomatoes?
I've been growing tomatoes for about 16 years.
Wow, that's a long, long time.
That's right, and I've grown up in a tomato greenhouse. My parents had a tomato greenhouse. It's all I know.
Fantastic. So how many would you grow, say, in a year?
We have 2 tomato greenhouses, and combined we grow over 500 million tomatoes per year.
Wow, that's a lot of tomatoes. That is crazy. Imagine all those just laid across on football pitches and football pitches, all big truckloads of them. Great stuff. Let's meet our schools to see who we have taking part today. Let's go to Monks Path School first in West Midlands, where Mr. Wild's class is taking part. Hello, children. Great to have you all watching and learning with us today. Let's go over to Holywell School now. They too are in the West Midlands, where Miss Lane's class is taking part. Hello, children.
Hello.
Lovely smiley faces there. Let's go to St Joseph's in the Park, who are in Herefordshire, where Miss Hassell's class is taking part. Hello, children. And finally, let's go over to Brunswick House in Kent, where Miss Brayford's class is taking part.
Can I say hi?
Hello, children. It really is great to have you all watching and learning with us today. Let's find out a bit more about where we are, because Gert, this place is huge. How big is it?
You could fit 10 football pitches in here.
10 football pitches. Wow, that's a lot of tomatoes, isn't it?
It's loads, yeah.
How many plants would you say are in here?
I've got about 600,000 plants in here.
Wow, that's a lot. So what makes a glass house like this so good for growing tomatoes in the UK?
Because with this greenhouse, this glass house, you can create the conditions to grow plants in the best possible way. And when plants are healthy, the tomatoes coming off of those plants are healthy as well. Fantastic,
because the children, obviously, you can't feel this. It's so warm in here. That's why we're wearing T-shirts. It's like it's a summer's day.
Yes, it's about 25 degrees in here.
It's lovely. I'm going to be in my deck chair later on. So how many different varieties of tomatoes do you grow in here?
We could grow up to 11 or 12 varieties in one season. And you see a small selection here. We grow the midi plum tomatoes, the orange ones, which are actually Japanese.
Fantastic.
We've got these yellow tomatoes here. They're from Spain. We've got these wonderful baby cherry tomatoes, and they're with a really nice juicy flavour, as well as these on the vine tomatoes.
Fantastic. So quite a few varieties of tomatoes. Do you grow any other types of fruit and vegetable?
On this site we also grow cucumbers and peppers.
Great, so you could really make a salad with everything that you grow here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great stuff. Well, we're learning lots about tomatoes already. I do know that many of you have been learning by using all the resources that we have on our website. You're very clued up already. So let's go over to Monks Path School now and let's find out what Mr. Wild's class already know. Who do we have there, Mr. Wild? That's a really good fact. I think that was Zach. So Zach said that China grows the most tomatoes in the world, Gert. Is that right?
That is absolutely right. That's 100% correct.
Fantastic, great fact, Zach. Let's get another one from Mr. Wild's class. Wow, fantastic. So the biggest tomato ever grown weighed 3.5 kilograms, Gert. That's according to Molly, is she right?
I think she could be. That is one big tomato.
That was one big tomato. Yeah. Well done, Molly. That's great learning. Let's get one more fact from Mr. Wild's class. That was Hamill. So Hamill said that when tomatoes were first introduced to Europe, the people that tried them thought they were poisonous.
Yes, it was actually the Spanish that took the tomatoes from Mexico. And when they took them from Mexico back to Europe, they didn't really know what to do with them.
Well, we're very thankful that we found out that they were very tasty and good for you. Great stuff, Mr. Wild's class. You have obviously been learning lots about tomatoes. There's lots still more to learn, including this very short video. This is more about the different varieties of tomatoes and where they came from.
Tomatoes around the world. Tomatoes are grown all over the world, in countries like China, India, Spain, and here in the United Kingdom. In fact, tomatoes are grown in over 50 countries across the globe, making them one of the world's biggest crops. They were first cultivated in the Andes Mountains in South America. In countries we now call Peru, Bolivia, Chile and Ecuador, as far back as 700 BC. That's over 2,700 years ago. The tomato first arrived here in Europe in the 16th century, although it is still unclear exactly how the tasty red fruit got here. Some say that the tomatoes were brought back from Central America by Christopher Columbus, while another legend suggests that 2 priests brought them from Mexico to Italy. However they got here, there are now around 10,000 known varieties across the world, many of which we grow today. All of these tomatoes grow on vines like this and need lots of sunshine and water. They are usually red, but different varieties produce different coloured tomatoes like orange, yellow, or even black. Some of the most common varieties that we eat are beef, plum, cherry, and piccolo, which are different shapes and sizes, but all red. They all taste slightly different, but are all rich in vitamin C. And as the tasty tomato is one of the most popular fruits we eat, each year we have to produce more than 160 million tonnes of them worldwide to keep up with demand.
Welcome back. So as you can see, we are rising through the vines. It's absolutely amazing. The smell is, absolutely delicious. It's making me hungry. And look how high we are going. These vines are so tall. Now we're up here. This should give you an idea of how big this place is. Wow, Gert, this is amazing. It stretches as far as the eye can see, either way. It's pretty cool up here, isn't it?
There's a lot of plants here.
It's much hotter up here as well, isn't it? Is that because all the heat is rising?
The heat is rising and we're right in the sun.
Fantastic. So these are pretty big at the moment, these vines. Are they going to grow any bigger?
Every week they grow about a foot and then we drop them a foot.
Oh, and then so you cut them, do you?
They're just going to grow, keep growing up, and we keep winding the string around the plant to keep them upright. And every week the plant makes 3 leaves and another set of flowers.
Fantastic. So we've just come up on an amazing machine to get us up here. What is this machine used for and what's it called?
This is a scissor lift and we can spend all day driving up and down the lanes.
It's quite fun. Is this used for, I guess, coming up here and tending to the top of the plants?
Yeah, we're trimming the flowers on the vines because we need to have the right amount of fruits per vine. And like I said, we trim the string around the plant to keep it upright.
Lovely. So each of these little flowers, are they going to be a tomato at the end?
Only when a bumblebee pollinates a flower, which we call foraging. When a bumblebee visits the flower, it will turn into a tomato.
Wow, so this is why these bumblebees that we can see flying around, you may not be able to see them, children, but there are quite a few bumblebees buzzing around up here. And so they go over to the flower. They're attracted by yellow, aren't they, Gert? So they sit on the flower, pollinate them, and then this will be a tomato.
Absolutely, yeah. They'll actually leave a brown mark on the flower, and then we can tell that the actual flower is pollinated.
So if a bumblebee doesn't go over to a flower, what happens?
Then the flower just closes, and it doesn't turn into a tomato.
Wow, Wow, so bumblebees are very, very important, aren't they?
They're so important.
We're going to find out more about bumblebees later on in the lesson, children. But once this has turned into a flower, how long does that take until it is an actual tomato ready to be picked, Gert?
In the midst of summer, it takes 6 weeks from a flower to a fully ripe fruit.
Fantastic. So as the vines grow, so obviously the flower then gets pollinated, all the ripe tomatoes are down at the bottom we saw as we were coming up.
Yeah, because when you look at this cluster of flowers, next week this cluster of flowers will look like this one, and this one will look like this one, and this one will look like this one.
Because we can see there's always these little baby green tomatoes already there, and you can see there's some flowers on the same little stalk. So these have all been pollinated and they're all growing into tomatoes.
They've been pollinated, and you can see a teeny tiny little baby tomato in there. Can you tell?
Wow!
Cute, eh?
That's amazing. So like a tiny little green bead that's inside this little green section there. That's pretty amazing. So once they do look quite orangey or red, is that when you need to pick them? Is it always by sight that you know they're ready, or do you feel them?
Yeah, when the last tomato on the vine starts to turn color, that's when we pick the whole vine off.
Right, okay, fantastic. And how do you do that? Because I'm guessing tomatoes, you can't really kind of just get a machine to do it. Does it have to be done by hand?
It has to be done by hand. That's why we have about 100 people working in this greenhouse.
Wow, okay, so when you know, okay, that is ready to be picked, is it quite important for them to be picked? Do they go off if they're left on the vine for too long?
They have a shelf life of about 2 weeks, but we try to get them to the shop within a day.
Wow, so they're nice and fresh for us.
Exactly.
We appreciate that, Gert, don't we, children? Wow, it's amazing to be up here. It really is, children. I think the children may have some good questions for you now, Gert, because we have learnt so much. So let's go over to our first school for some questions. Let's go back to Monk's Pass School to see if Mr. Wild's class have any questions. Who do we have there, Mr. Wild? That's a really good question. I think that was Cooper. Well done, Cooper. What different types of tomatoes do you grow, Gert?
That's a real good question. We grow up to 11 or 12 different varieties in a season. And it varies from teeny tiny little cherry tomatoes to large beefsteak tomatoes. We can grow round-shaped tomatoes or plum-shaped tomatoes, or even stripy tomatoes. We grow different colors as well.
I love that, stripy tomatoes. That's brilliant. I'd like to have one of those on my salad. Really great question, Cooper. Let's get another question from Mr. Wild's class.
How many tomatoes grow on one plant?
That's a really good question, Erin. Erin would like to know how many tomatoes grow on one plant, Gert.
Depending on what variety it is, we can have up to 150 tomatoes on a plant at one time.
Wow, that's a lot of tomatoes. I guess they have to be the smaller ones, they're not so heavy.
That's right. Yeah.
I'm learning. Really great questions, Monk's Pass School. Let's go over to Holywell School now. Do we have anyone there, Miss Lane, with a question for Gert?
Yes, we've got Edward.
How many tomatoes in a bottle of tomato ketchup?
What a really great question, Edward. I'd like to know this, Gert, because I love tomato ketchup. How many tomatoes do you need to make a bottle of tomato ketchup?
I believe it takes up to 4 or even 5 tomatoes to go in a bottle of ketchup.
Fabulous stuff. Great question. Let's get one more question from Holywell School.
What colour can tomatoes be?
Really good question. So Molly would like to know the different colours that tomatoes can come in.
We grow yellow tomatoes, we grow orange tomatoes, we can grow purple tomatoes, and of course red tomatoes as well.
And you mentioned stripy tomatoes as well. I've got the lingo now. What colours would you get with stripes?
It would vary from green to purple, so they're really like tiger print on the tomatoes. They're really funny.
How cool would that be, children? Stripy tomatoes. Great stuff, really great questions. Don't worry as well, St Joseph in the Park and Brunswick House. You'll have some opportunity to ask Gert some questions a little later on. Time for another short video now. And this is all about how these amazing vines grow tomatoes here in the glasshouse.
Tomatoes, from farm to fork. Here on this farm in Kent, they grow an incredible 225 million tomatoes every year. To be able to produce so many tomatoes, the grower has to plant 2 or 3 crops each year in 2 enormous glasshouses. Each one is the size of 8 football pitches. Growing the tomatoes in glasshouses protects them from cold and frost all year round. The tomatoes grow best in a controlled climate and don't like extreme heat or cold. So here in the glasshouse, the temperature ranges from a warm 25 degrees Celsius during the day to 18 degrees Celsius at night. The baby tomato plants are grown from seeds in Holland. Once the small plants are 4 weeks old, they are transported to the UK by lorry. When they arrive at the farm, they are planted into large glasshouses like this one. Each glasshouse has an amazing 250,000 tomato plants at any one time. The baby tomato plants are grown in blocks of spongy rock wool. String is attached to the young vines to help them grow, giving each tomato an equal amount of sun. Every plant is fed water and nutrients through a dropper like this. The plants grow quickly. They flower in just a few weeks. Bees pollinate the flowers, then the baby tomato grows. After 8 weeks, the flower turns into a ripe tomato like this, ready for harvest. All the tomatoes need to be harvested by hand because they're delicate and bruise easily. The pickers move along the vines with trolleys, picking the tomatoes and placing them into crates. A glasshouse this large can produce 2.5 million ripe tomatoes every week. That's nearly 1 tomato each for every person living in the whole of Manchester. Once the tomatoes are picked, the crates are collected by driverless mini tractors. They are then taken to the loading areas where they are weighed. Next, the tomatoes go to the pack house, where they are checked for quality and packed in punnets. Before being loaded onto refrigerated lorries and taken to stores near you. It takes just 3 days from picking the tomatoes before they are ready for you to buy and enjoy for your lunch.
Welcome back. We hope you enjoyed learning more about how sunshine and bees are very important for growing tomatoes. And talking of bees, Gert, we have one of your beehives here, don't we? It looks a bit different to a beehive you would see sort of out and about in a wood or when a beekeeper would have hives. Why is that?
Because these bees are bred especially to do their job in the greenhouse. So everything is in this hive. There's a bag of sugar water underneath, so they can drink water with sugar for their energy. But what they really want to do is they want to fly out of here and find pollen, which feeds the brood. You can see these little cereal-like bubbles.
Yeah.
In those bubbles, we've got little baby bumblebees growing, and the worker bees supply the pollen to the baby bees.
They look very happy, so it is emulating what would happen in a hive.
Yeah,
is
that's
that right?
Yeah.
Wow, it's fantastic. And as you said, they do look like, it does look like breakfast cereal, doesn't it, that they're hatching out of?
They do, yeah.
So when we were up there, we saw the bumblebees flying around. I mean, without these bees, there wouldn't be any tomatoes, would there?
We would have a big problem because we need those bumblebees to sit on that flower and shake it so that the pollen falls out and pollinates the flower. Without the bumblebees, we wouldn't have any tomatoes.
Fantastic stuff. It's absolutely fascinating. I think we may have some more questions for you now, Gert. I think we should give our classes another opportunity.
Okay.
So let's go over to St Joseph's in the park now to see if Miss Hassell's class have any questions.
My question is, can you grow different coloured tomatoes?
That's a really great question, Sunny. So Sunny would like to know, can you grow different coloured tomatoes?
Well, I think we have the proof right here. We have red tomatoes, we have bright orange tomatoes, we have yellow tomatoes, we can grow green tomatoes, and we can even grow brown tomatoes.
Fantastic. And the great thing about tomatoes is in a salad they look amazing and they taste amazing as well, don't they? They really brighten up a salad. A really great question, Sunny. Let's get one more question from Miss Hassell's class.
Why are tomato skins shiny?
That's a really great question, Abby. So Abby would like to know why a tomato skin's shiny.
Well, when plants are healthy, they make a really shiny tomato. When the plant is not so happy, the skin is actually quite a bit dull. So when you see these shiny tomatoes, they came from really happy, strong, healthy plants.
Fantastic. So that's a really good indication then as to whether you're getting a nice, tasty, good for you tomato.
That's right.
Great questions. Let's go over to Brunswick House now. Do we have anyone there, Miss Brayford?
Would you like the question? What's tomato?
Right, so Charlie would like to know how many varieties of tomatoes there are.
There are probably hundreds of tomato varieties, and we keep track of them. And every year new varieties appear on the market, so we really have to keep track of them.
Fantastic. And he'd like to know as well, what's the juiciest type of tomato?
The juiciest type of tomato is a beefsteak tomato, which is succulent and full of juice.
And you would use that for cooking quite a lot, would you?
You can use it for all types of things, but cooking is probably the best.
Great stuff. Hopefully that answered your question, Charlie. Let's get one more question from Miss Brayford's class.
Do tomatoes have any special properties to help you with your health?
Oh, okay. So Eloise would like to know, do tomatoes have properties that are good for your health, Gert?
Oh yeah, there are lots of things that are healthy about tomatoes. They are a source of potassium. They're a veggie, so this just very healthy for you.
Fantastic stuff. Great questions, children. Hopefully, Gert, I'm sure he did answer those questions for you. So, Gert, when I think about tomatoes, I think about one of my favourite meals, which is a spaghetti bolognese. I absolutely love that. If I was to cook that at home, which kind of tomatoes would I put into it?
Well, I would recommend to use these midi plum tomatoes, but you could really use any type of tomato. You could use an orange or a yellow tomato to bring the color up a bit, or you could use this wonderfully sweet cherry tomato to bring it up, to get the sugary and the nice flavor going, or even this one would be nice.
Fantastic. So literally everything you've got in the fridge, really. I guess different things that you would put in salads pop into the spaghetti bolognese.
You can mix it up and see what you get.
What's your favourite way of eating tomatoes?
I snack on them all day. I eat tomatoes from my plants all day long.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think I've been trying not to eat too many tomatoes while I'm here, but maybe after this I will do. Can we take a look inside a tomato now and take a look at the different sections?
There you go.
So the skin is pretty tough, isn't it? Is that to stop any insects get into it? Or?
The skin is pretty tough because the skin actually protects what's most important to the tomato itself, which is the seed. The seed is in the gel here, and we call this the flesh. And the gel together with the flesh gives the tomato its flavor.
Fantastic. So these seeds in here, Gert, if I was to take one little seed and plant it, would I get a tomato plant out of that?
Only on some of the seeds. Some seeds will give you a nice strong tomato plant with nice tomatoes on it, but other seeds will just give you a small little runt.
Oh, okay. And it's all really important, I guess, isn't it, if you plant seeds, to just tend to them and water them. There's quite a lot that goes into nurturing a little plant, is there?
Yeah, and it takes about, when you first plant a tomato plant in the greenhouse, it takes about 8 weeks before you start harvesting the first fruits.
Okay, that's not too bad. Lovely stuff. And obviously we have lots of fresh tomatoes here. We also have quite a few products that are made using tomatoes as well, Gert. Could you run us through those?
Well, we've got our salsas, we've got our sun-dried tomatoes, we've got our juice, we've got our pasta sauces, we've got our tinned tomatoes. Literally, you can put them in any type of product.
You can do, can't you? Tomatoes are very versatile. And I'm guessing if you don't eat tomatoes, it's very difficult to kind of eat a lot of things. You know, it's on pizza, in pasta sauces.
You're in trouble.
Everything. And of course, children, tomatoes are tasty. They're good for us too as well. They are fat-free, they're low in sugar. And as Gert said as well, they're a source of potassium, which is good for a nice, healthy nervous system. So it's almost time to say goodbye, Gert. Unfortunately, I think they've got enough time just to go over to our schools to find out what you've learned. So let's head over to Monk's Path School to find out what Mr. Wiles' class has learned.
There's lots of different types of tomatoes in the world, and you can also, there's lots of different countries to get tomatoes from different colours as well.
Oh, so they've learned there's lots of different types of tomatoes in the world, Gert. Lots of different colours, lots of different varieties.
That's great.
It'd be very hard to count them all, wouldn't it?